Care of the sick. Christian compassion has manifested itself in a particular way in the care of the sick and suffering. Based on the signs present in Jesus' public ministry, healing of the blind, lepers, and paralytics, the Church understands that caring for the sick, in whom she readily recognizes the crucified Lord, is an important part of her mission. During a plague in the city of Carthage, where he was bishop, St. Cyprian reminded Christians of the importance of caring for the sick. This pestilence and plague, which seem so horrible and deadly, searches out the righteousness of each one, and examines the minds of the human race to see whether the healthy serve the sick, whether relatives love each other with sincerity, whether masters have pity on their sick servants, whether doctors do not abandon the sick who beg for help. The Christian tradition of visiting the sick, washing their wounds, and comforting the afflicted is not simply a philanthropic endeavor, but an ecclesial action through which the members of the Church touch the suffering flesh of Christ. In the 16th century, St. John of God founded the Hospitaller order that bears his name, creating modern hospitals that welcomed everyone, regardless of social or economic status. The famous expression, "Do good, my brothers," became a motto for active charity towards the sick. At the same time, St. Camillus de Lethes founded the Order of Ministers of the Sick, the Camillians, and taking on the mission of serving the sick with total dedication. His rule commands, each person should ask the Lord for a motherly affection for their neighbor, so that we may serve them with all charity, both in soul and body, because we desire, with the grace of God, to serve all the sick with the affection that a loving mother has for her only sick child. In hospitals, on battlefields, in prisons, and on the streets, the Camillians have embodied the mercy of Christ the physician. Caring for the sick with a maternal affection, as a mother cares for her child, many consecrated women have played an even greater role in providing health care for the sick. The Daughters of Charity of St. Vincent de Paul, the Hospital Sisters, the Little Sisters of Divine Providence, and many other women's congregations have become a maternal and discreet presence in hospitals, nursing homes, and retirement homes. They have brought comfort, a listening ear, a presence, and above all, tenderness. They have built, often with their own hands, healthcare facilities in areas lacking medical assistance. They taught hygiene, assisted in childbirth, and administered medicine with natural wisdom and deep faith. Their homes became oases of dignity, where no one was excluded. The touch of compassion was the first medicine. St. Louise de Marillac wrote to her sisters, the Daughters of Charity, reminding them that they have been singularly blessed by God for the service of the sick, poor of the hospitals. Today, this legacy continues in Catholic hospitals, healthcare facilities in remote areas, clinics operating in jungles, shelters for drug addicts, and in field hospitals in war zones. The Christian presence among the sick reveals that salvation is not an abstract idea, but concrete action. In the act of healing a wound, the Church proclaims that the kingdom of God begins among the most vulnerable. In doing so, she remains faithful to the one who said, "I was sick, and you visited me." When the Church kneels beside a leper, a malnourished child, or an anonymous dying person, she fulfills her deepest vocation, to love the Lord where he is most disfigured. Care of the poor in monastic life. Monastic life, which originated in the silence of the desert, was from the outset a witness to solidarity. Monks and nuns left everything, wealth, prestige, family, not only because they despised worldly goods, contemptus mundi, but also to encounter the poor Christ in this radical detachment. St. Basil the Great, in his rule, saw no contradiction between the monk's life of prayer and contemplation and their work on behalf of the poor. For him, hospitality and care for the needy were an integral part of monastic spirituality, and monks, even after having left everything to embrace poverty, had to help the poorest with their work, because in order to have enough to help the needy, it is clear that we must work diligently. This way of life is profitable not only for subduing the body, but also for charity towards our neighbor, so that through us God may provide enough for our weaker brothers and sisters. In Caesarea, where he was bishop, he built a place known as Basiliad, which included lodgings, hospitals, and schools for the poor and sick. The monk, therefore, was not only an ascetic, but also a servant. Basil thus demonstrated that to be close to God, one must be close to the poor. Concrete love was the criterion of holiness. Praying and caring, contemplating and healing, writing and welcoming. Everything was an expression of the same love for Christ. In the West, St. Benedict of Nursia formulated a rule which would become the backbone of European monastic spirituality. Welcoming the poor and pilgrims occupies a prominent place in the document. The poor and pilgrims are to be received with all care and hospitality, for it is in them that Christ is received. These were not just words. For centuries, Benedictine monasteries were places for refuge for widows, abandoned children, pilgrims, and beggars. For Benedict, community life was a school of charity. Manual labor not only had a practical function, but also formed the heart for service. Sharing among the monks, caring for the sick, and listening to the most vulnerable, prepare them to welcome Christ, who comes in the person of the poor and the stranger. Today, Benedictine monastic hospitality remains a sign of a church that opens its doors, welcomes without asking, and heals without demanding anything in return. Over time, Benedictine monasteries became places for overcoming the culture of exclusion. Monks and nuns cultivated the land, produced food, prepared medicines, and offered them with simplicity to those most in need. Their silent work was the leaven of a new civilization, where the poor were not problem to be solved, but brothers and sisters to be welcomed. The rule of sharing, working together, and helping the vulnerable established an economy of solidarity, in contrast to the logic of accumulation. The monk's witness showed that voluntary poverty, far from being miserly, is a path of freedom and communion. They did not limit themselves to helping the poor. They became their neighbors, brothers and sisters in the same Lord. In cells and cloisters, they created a mysticism of God's presence in the little ones. In addition to providing material assistance, monasteries played a fundamental role in the cultural and spiritual formation of the humblest. In times of plague, war, and famine, they were places where the needy found bread and medicine, but also dignity and a voice. It was there that orphans were educated, apprentices received training, and ordinary people were taught agricultural techniques and how to read. Knowledge was shared as a gift and a responsibility. The abbot was both teacher and father. The monastic school was a place of freedom through truth. Indeed, as St. John Cassian writes, the monk must be characterized by humility of heart, which leads not to knowledge that puffs up, but to knowledge that enlightens through the fullness of charity. By forming consciences and transmitting wisdom, monks contributed to a Christian pedagogy of inclusion. Culture, marked by faith, was shared with simplicity. Knowledge, illuminated by charity, became service. Monastic life thus revealed itself as a style of holiness and a concrete way to transform society. The monastic tradition teaches us that prayer and charity, silence and service, cells and hospitals form a single spiritual fabric. The monastery is a place of listening and action, of worship and sharing. St. Bernard of Clairvaux, the great Cistercian reformer, firmly recalled the need for a sober and measured life. In the refectory, as in monastic clothing and buildings, recommending the support and care of the poor. For him, compassion was not an option, but the true path of following Christ. Monastic life, therefore, if faithful to the original vocation, shows that the Church is fully the bride of the Lord only when she is also the sister of the poor. The cloister is not only a refuge from the world, but a school where one learns to serve it better. Where monks and nuns have opened their doors to the poor, the Church has revealed with humility and firmness that contemplation does not exclude mercy, but demands it as its purest fruit.